Well, the best thing is to get the pet to think it's their idea. So you don't want to pick them up, force them into position, plop a cat down on a stool or a couch, because they're just going to jump right down if you do that.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. My name is Alan Weitz.
And I'm Jill Waterman.
And don't be surprised if our audio engineer, Mike Weinstein, hops on the mic with a question or two. He actually comes up with good ones once in a while.
Oh, thanks, Alan.
On a recent show, I jokingly said that I add the hashtag kittens to my Instagram post as a sneaky way of getting more hits. So it was no big surprise when one of our listeners dropped us a note saying, hey, listen, I've got a flourishing career as a professional pet photographer. After spending years as an art director for high-end clients, Karen Hoglund said goodbye to her career as an art director and reinvented herself as a pet photographer. That was in 2012, and she has not looked back since. Based in Denver, Colorado, Karen is fully in her element with a squeaky toy in one hand, a camera in the other, and clothing that invariably is covered with fur. To broaden the scope of our discussion from posed pet portraits to candid editorial-style work, we've asked an old friend back to the show to tell us about a couple of her projects featuring champion canines and the people that tend to the needs of these four-legged works of art. In the second half of the show, Sony Artisan Nancy Borowick will describe her experiences documenting the Westminster Dog Show and her long-term project, Part of the Pack. One last thing. If you didn't get the memo, May is National Pet Month, so make sure to pick up some catnip or a fresh slab of rawhide to mark the occasion, and make sure you share some with your pet. We're going to start off asking you questions, Karen. And by the way, it's okay, Nancy, if you want to poke your head in once in a while and add some comments, okay? We're very good about that stuff. Okay, Karen, now I was being a wise ass when I said I add the hashtag kittens to my Instagram post as a sneaky way of getting more hits. Based on your experience, does hashtag kittens or pictures of cute pets really work as a magnet on social media? What's your take?
I wish it were that easy. I actually did some research and just to see how much traffic the keyword kittens gets. So there are 368,000 searches per month on Google for kittens. But if you were to put in the word photographer, there are 301,000 searches per month. So you'd probably only get about 20% more views if you used hashtag kittens than if you used hashtag photographers.
But they make better pets. Photographers are messy. I've had one before. They're terrible.
Ellen, you have a cat, right?
Yeah. She's cool. She's all right.
What's her name?
Pitzel. That's Yiddish for tiny. She's a Bombay, and we got her real small, and her head was the size of a walnut. She's grown since then, so it's kind of a funny little thing. But yeah, she's very, very cool. We tend to be cat people. We won't talk about dog people, but it's okay, we will. Anyway, Karen, you started out as an art director for advertising agencies. What, if anything, did you adopt from your agency background when you started photographing pets?
Well, one of the things I've adopted is good communication and planning. So when you're in an ad agency, you have to really over-communicate details. So I was in charge of props for photo shoots, and I used to gather like 5 or 6 different white cereal bowls for Kellogg's, and then we'd have to take Polaroids of them, FedEx them to the client, just so there wouldn't be any surprises about what the cereal bowl looked like. No one likes surprises.
Having worked in advertising, I know exactly what you mean, because essentially everyone's paranoid that something will go wrong and they'll be blamed for it. Whereas if you're photographing someone's pet, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? The animal's not happy with you that day. And maybe you try again, but again, it's more of a fun thing, all right? Whereas, when you're shooting a bowl of cereal, everyone's taking it seriously, which is kind of funny if you think about that. So, and according to your website, you're very good at recognizing signs of stress and anxiety through a pet's body language. What kind of signs do you look for? And what tips would you offer our listeners to maintain optimum comfort levels when photographing pets?
Well, it's all in the eyes and the ears. So there's this thing called whale eye, where the dog turns their head away, but he's still keeping his eye on you. So the white of the eye is showing, like they're deflecting their head away. They're kind of like, I'm not looking for trouble. Like they look a little scared and anxious. That's bad. Lip licking and yawning can be bad in dogs.
Whale eye? That's what it's called?
It's when the dog turns their head away, but the dog's keeping its eye on you still. And it's sort of like deflecting a threat. They're like, I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not interested in conflict.
That's interesting. My son has a dog, and Shiba Inu, whatever they call those things. And that's the only way that dog looks at me.
So some people think that's a cute look, but it really means they're nervous and they're anxious. With cats, if their eyes are like wide open, like they saw a ghost, that is not the look you're going for. So once I was doing a photo shoot and the neighbor started using the leaf blower and the cat thought the world was going to end, when his eyes are like saucers. And we had to stop. And, it took a while for the cat to feel comfortable again. It doesn't take much sometimes to make animals nervous.
Do you have any tips for posing pets for a photo session? I know that's a real critical thing. It's not just a matter of taking a picture that's a good exposure and a composition. There are postures. I know I knew somebody who spent a lot of time photographing horses and equine photography. I mean, there are specific rules about what you do and don't do when photographing a horse. Any ideas about that for people who have cats, dogs, hamsters?
Sure. Well, the best thing is to get the pet to think it's their idea. So you don't want to pick them up, force them into position, plop a cat down on a stool or a couch or something, because they're just going to jump right down if you do that. Even a dog, like they'll listen to you, but they'll just come running towards you. So you kind of just want to play with them naturally, kind of be patient. Don't be saying their name over and over. It's not like, Murphy, 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 sit, stay. They're just going to get stressed out. I feel like you just need to let them do their doggy thing.
That makes sense, though. You really just want to have more of a chill atmosphere. You don't want them to, you want them to calm down so that they will do what you're trying to get out of them.
Absolutely. You just want to give them lots of breaks, like let them pee on things and sniff things and like explore the park, just so that they think it's like a super fun day out. And then you're just not like demanding them like it's this horrible training session. You don't want that. You just want them to be relaxed.
What about treats for pets? Is it advisable to give an animal a treat?
That's a really good question because most people assume that treats will make it easier. That's what they do with their cell phone. That's what they think works. But I actually found it kind of backfires. Like one thing it could even do is if the person's holding the treat off to the side, like when you take a bad selfie and you're not looking at the camera, like the pet's like looking off stage left, you get that with treats. You also get an impatient animal that wants more treats. So I try to get like the connection with them, like looking at my eyes, my camera. Like that's my trademark is like getting the pet to look engaged with me. And I just haven't been able to do that with treats. So sometimes I use sounds instead. I've had really good luck with a squeaky or a duck call, quail call. You can just take some of the toys your dog likes and use those sounds. I have a whole bag that I bring with to photo shoots.
So do sounds work the same for both dogs and cats?
No. Cats are petrified of those sounds. Cats do better with like a piece of yarn or maybe a feather, a little more gentle, nothing like alarming like a squeaky noise.
And what other differences are there between dogs and cats in terms of their behavior?
So for cats, since they're so curious, sometimes I'll rearrange the plants on the bookshelves or the knickknacks. And they get just so curious and they can't help themselves. They go looking up there, and then that's exactly where I want them to be, right, on the windowsill. It also helps to ask cat owners what their cat likes because each cat is different. even more so than dogs. So recently I was doing a photo shoot and the cat was not that interested. And I started talking to the person about like, well, what makes her relaxed? And she said, well, if I had Netflix on and my laptop out, then she would come over and want to cuddle. And I'm like, well, heck, that's what we're going to do. So we turn on the TV and put her laptop. I'm a fly on the wall, just like trying to get her to feel comfortable. And it worked. So you get a little collaboration with cat owners, maybe more than dog owners.
That's really cool.
What about the differences between cat owners and dog owners? Do you find different traits between them?
Well, a lot of my clients have cats and dogs, so they're the same. But in general, dog people tend to want nature and scenery. So there's mountains here, and everyone wants the mountains in the photos. For a dog, we'll go on a short hike in the mountains. That's what dog people want. Cat people know, it has to be in their house. And they also know the cat will only do what it wants to do. So I feel like they give you a little more creative freedom. I really like photographing cats because the owners don't expect as much, so they relax and they just like watch me and they kind of like laugh at what I'm doing.
I would imagine you actually do things like getting down on all fours and just, rolling around if you have to get their attention and get them to just get into whatever you're trying to get them into, to engage them better. I would assume to an observer, you can look kind of weird when you're working. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm sure I look ridiculous. I'm always lying down low or backing up into a cactus or something because I'm not paying attention. And even like I'll be with a cat, I'll maybe be in their house lying down on the ground photographing one of the cats. And once the other cat in the house started walking on top of me, that was kind of funny.
That's great.
Well, here's an interesting question. You ask pet owners to sign a photo release as part of the shoot. What is in the and what's the purpose of a release for a pet? Is it the same for people? Legal stuff? Well, obviously it's legal, but explain.
Well, of course, there's liability. And then the other thing is copyright. The average person doesn't really understand that you can't just use the photos for whatever. Like, they think it's fine to give it to maybe their dog's breeder. But then next thing you know, the breeder's using it for their commercial website to sell puppies. And maybe that's not what I wanted them to use the photos for. So I try to be clear, it's about for their personal use. And please don't enter it in contests, unless they ask me. Maybe if it's for the rescue, they got their dog, I'll say, yeah, that's fine. But most of the time, contests can be weird about copyright. So the contract just covers that, so they don't, they're not surprised later.
As far as profitability, I would imagine you do very well with the prints that you sell, be they canvas or metal prints or whatever, that whole array of products that are available after you go click, as compared to the shooting fee?
The session fee is mostly just a retainer for my planning time and just to reserve the date. I actually specialize in high-end wall art, like framed canvas, metal prints. But there are some packages that include digitals, and they're really popular around holiday card time of year.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you. If they just want to make prints for themselves or immediate family or whatever, that's okay. But you just don't want them going to other people or organizations, or like you said, a breeder that could take that good photograph. So obviously, a good photograph, especially a purebred animal, that has value. That's a selling point. That's your product.
Yeah, most of the profits from the wall art.
Is there one style of wall art that's most popular with your clients?
I think it depends on the style of their home. So I try to match the artwork to their style. And I have software that mocks it up on their walls. So like they'll send me a picture of their wall where they're thinking of hanging something, and we'll just like see what would it look like with like a matted framed print What would it look like more modern? I've got the samples. They're touching and feeling all the samples, looking at it, just kind of like match make the product.
That's really cool. What kind of software is it?
It's called ProSelect. It's kind of like an interior design software, but it also helps you with the ordering and just organize everything really nice.
Let's get back to talking about your photo sessions. What about photographing older pets? Does that require a different approach?
Yeah, it does. I ask questions during the planning session so I know what limitations the dog has. Like, for example, do we need like a flat, accessible location? Like, if the dog is really old, we're not going to go on a strenuous hike. Or are they so sick that maybe we need to have it in their home and like just cozying up on a blanket is all they're capable of? That's perfectly fine. I just try to find that out ahead of time. Maybe they're hard of hearing. There's all sorts of different things that can go wrong in old age, So I just try to be really sensitive to that.
How many total animals and people have you photographed? Like, what's the largest group?
Well, once there were 10 Mastiff puppies with their mother. Another time there were 3 people, one of which was a baby, and 3 cats. And sometimes it gets to be a little bit of crowd control if you get too many subjects. So, like I just recently did 6 people. It was 3 generations, 2 horses. One was a 10-day-old foal. And then the funny thing is the cat decided to join us. Like I had everyone all in there. And then the cat walked up and we're like, great. Now we have another subject.
How do you set up that shoot? Is there one person or animal that's the alpha and you base the shoot around that and the others come in secondarily? Or is it each person and pet is same level of importance?
It kind of depends on who I think will stay still the longest. I kind of size them up. If it's a big group of people, I might pose them first. I'm not going to have the grandparents running back and forth. And then I'll add the animals. But if I feel like a person can move around really quickly and they have a really hyper dog, I might have them just kind of follow the animal around, just so it's a little more natural. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. Once I had to photograph 3 cats with 3 people, and that was crazy because the one was a baby. So like dad was holding the baby and 1 cat, and mom was holding 2 cats, and it was just kind of chaos.
Say you have to photograph the situation with 3 cats, and they have to all be in there, yet there's not one frame in which all 3 of them are doing what you wish they would be doing as far as looking at the camera, posing, whatever. Would you then take that and maybe do a composite, take, a cat out of one image and pop it into the other if it was relatively like same position? Have you ever done that, or would you consider it?
Yeah, I do that all the time. You could definitely. It's like when you have someone's eyes that are blinking and you just head swap out so the eyes are open. It's no problem.
Okay, that's what I figured. Yep. All right. Because I imagine very seldom you're going to have, say, 2 or 3 cats or even 1 cat cooperating with you. But I imagine if you do that, then it makes life a little bit easier.
It would actually be easier if I used a tripod, but I never use one. And the funny thing is with cat people, they don't even always want the swap. They like their cats looking crazy. They think it's funny, like kind of awkward family photo. Like,
oh, so you usually hand hold?
Yes. I do. And I just feel like I need to constantly be changing my angles. Animals move around a lot. Kids move around a lot. I just feel like my hands are tied behind my back whenever I try to use a tripod.
Wow. Okay. Because you have to change position that often, I would assume that's the reason.
Yeah. I'm constantly changing my angles and moving back and forth and side to side.
Okay. I understand. I try to work on a tripod as much as I can. Because I could walk away from the camera, come back, and nothing's changing the composition. But here, the composition doesn't matter because everything's moving anyway, especially if you're dealing with, cats or any animal that, is a little bit facetted at the moment. Now, you have a blog post that offers tips for photographing darker colored pets, which again is a challenge. So as an example, I have a Bombay cat, and when she's out in the bright sunshine, you can see that she's really a deep chestnut color. She's not black, but you bring her indoors and put her in the shade, and she just becomes a black hole. She practically sucks the light out of the room. What do you do in those situations to put life back into the coat?
Well, you're correct. You definitely need some directional light. You might not want direct sun, though. I feel like shade actually is pretty good. If they're indoors, you could get your cat to kind of face the window, like just kind of lure them over there. And then the window soft light is lighting them. I'd like to use off-camera flash if I can get away with it. But a lot of cats and horses, it spooks them.
Yeah, they get spooked by the weirdest things that we wouldn't even consider. And I know with like the racetracks, they make a point of taking any kind of footprints off the track before they have each race, because a horse will see a footprint and just freak out. So, this is what I was told. One of the reasons why they smooth it out quite often, footprints throw them off. It just confuses the heck out. I don't know if it's a pattern thing, the way it works with the way their vision works or whatever it is.
On that note, with the horses, would you tend more to use a tripod for a situation like you described with the group of people and the horse?
I probably should have used a tripod if I knew it was good for me, because I'm head swapping and it's not exactly the same. It's a little hard with the horses. With a tripod, I feel like it's kind of in the way in the pasture. And they can get a little spooked by extra equipment. So I actually did not use a tripod for that large portrait with the horses.
So what are you working with in terms of your gear, in terms of the camera and lenses and stuff?
I have a Nikon Z7 II, and I have a 24-70 and the 70-200. The Z mount Nikon lenses are amazing. And I'm watching very closely to see what new body they release soon. I feel like that's dangerous. And I'm going to have a second body soon. I used to have two D750s, and I really liked having one lens on each body. So I kind of want to go to that again, where I have two bodies that are the same. I do like the silent shutter on the mirrorless. That works really well with animals.
So actually, it's not the lens choices don't really vary much from what you'd use for shooting people in many, many ways. This is kind of a standard kit.
Yeah, I mean, you might use a 200 millimeter for horse. Maybe you're using a wider angle for a Chihuahua or a small dog. You want to make them look dramatic and big. Put them in the center of the frame.
Now, okay, explain that to me. The 200, and obviously you have to get back more to the horse and you'll want to zoom in more, but for a Chihuahua, you'll want a wider angle lens?
Depends what look you're going for. I feel like they look too little in the scene if you're using a long lens. I feel like you can get really close up to the Chihuahua, like with a wide angle. You put them on a rock, you get kind of low, you like get really close. They're looking right at you because you're like up in their face. It's just
very heroic, heroic Chihuahua. So here's something I'm curious about. You mentioned that, again, different animals react differently to flash. Do you use large reflectors at all if you're working outdoors rather than flash? And if so, do the animals, are they a little more okay with a large, say, a flex fill or something like that?
I used to use reflectors like all the time when I started, but in the end, I felt like I needed more than just like a kiss of light. It's better just to use off-camera flash and freeze the action. But then again, sometimes they're not okay with it. Sometimes it's the modifiers that they're more afraid of than the actual flash. And sometimes the reflector is kind of like a modifier. That big, scary reflector flapping in the wind is more problematic than if I were to use off-camera flash with, say, Magmod or something less scary and small.
Do you find working with a mirrorless better than working with a reflex camera as far as being able to really track what's going on and not having any blackout? Do you find I would imagine it's advantageous to you because so many things happen in a split second.
I do love the mirrorless for sure. One thing is, you can keep the shutter sound off, which is great. It doesn't scare the animals. And then I do like to just like wait for that decisive moment. And I don't like spray and pray. I like to take, not thousands of photos. I don't want to be editing thousands of photos.
What about drive mode? Do you stay on high continuous in those situations just to nail every split second you can?
Well, I like the continuous autofocus because then, like when the animals move around a lot, when they do move somewhere I want, I know I'm already in focus. And then maybe I can take a few frames in a row quickly.
Okay, fair. I mean, there are some people that can do that who have the ability to really anticipate, especially if you've been doing something for a while and you understand what your subject is. I get that. And I know other people are just, they literally, they use it as a machine gun. And they edit thousands of pictures. They got the picture, but they have no idea what they're capturing as it's happening. It's an interesting transition you made. I mean, I can see how pet photography is a lot more relaxing than being in an ad agency, having been in those environments, and a lot easier on your wear and tear on your soul and your body and mind compared to advertising, for sure.
I just feel like in the end, I'm a better photographer than I was ever an art director. Maybe I love it more. Maybe it's a better fit for me. I definitely have a much better work-life balance now than I did in Chicago.
All right. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be chatting with Nancy Borowick.
I don't have a very discerning eye or heart. I love all dogs of all shapes and sizes.
Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back, and we're going to be chatting now with Nancy Borowick. Now, Nancy, welcome back to the show, for starters.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Now, you're primarily known for telling intimate stories about people, and then several years ago, you were assigned to photograph the Westminster Dog Show, which has some interesting people as well, but that's not the main feature. How challenging was it to going candid, more intimate style of picture taking from a more of a scripted, highly orchestrated, and often frenetic working environment?
Well, I kind of want to start by just giving you a little bit of backstory. About 3 months after my father had passed away from pancreatic cancer, and I had kind of like removed myself from the world. And my editor called me and she was like, I know you're taking time. I don't want to be in your way, but I know you love dogs. And we have the Westminster Dog Show coming up. Do you want to cover it? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I'm going to be there. And it sort of brought me back to the world, just being with the dogs and being in this environment. And actually the following year, my mother passed away about 364 days later, unfortunately. And the same thing happened. A few months go by and I get a call from the same editor saying, what do you think? Dog show. And I said, 110%, take me back. So I fell in love with the dog show. I love everything about it. It's performative, it's silly, it's so colorful. It's such a playground for a photographer. And yeah, so I'm usually working more in this intimate style of more candid observational photography. And the dog show is very frenetic and fast-paced. So it is challenging. I would say the two biggest challenges I have found in the many years that I've shot the event, the first is this horrible fluorescent lighting that is not super bright and it just dulls all the colors. And I love working with natural light, so it kills me. But in the frenetic energy of it all, it's weird. I kind of don't notice the chaos around me. In that chaos, I sort of calm down and focus in on just sort of the little moments that are happening. Because my very first year, I tried to cover everything. I tried to shoot as many breeds as I could. And I ended up getting really sick because I had just worked myself like a dog. And from that point on, I was like, I need to slow down and not cover it like a big news story, but really look for the like little moments and the things that bring me the most joy, because that'll come through in the photographs.
I I would imagine that we talked about you tell intimate stories, that behind the scenes, not when the dog is in the show, in the spotlight and doing its thing, but before and after and in the background. I would imagine there's some very interesting little intimate, candid scenes between the dogs and their owners in strange little environments, but they basically come together. The owner's keeping the dog calm and protected, and I imagine there's some interesting picture-taking opportunities that go on behind the scenes. It's not just the flashing glimmer.
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of what I'm most attracted to, because yes, these dogs are at the top of their game. They worked really hard to be able to participate in this huge, very prestigious show, but they're still dogs. And most of them are pets of these people. And it's that human canine bond. You see it. The human might be stressed about the event, and there's this sort of supporting of each other. There are these sweet moments. Because really, at the end of the day, yes, it's competition, but everyone there is involved because they love dogs. You feel that. And that's what, draws me to it. The onstage persona of these dogs, I'm very impressed by. Maybe I anthropomorphize a bit. I see dogs and I create a whole story in my head. I find that when I see a relationship between a dog and their handler or owner backstage in the benching areas, sometimes I'll just stand there and wait for that little moment that I know will come. I mean, Karen kind of talks about understanding the animals and anticipating how they might react or do things. I mean, not only is that so true for pets, but I will say now as a mom of 2 young children, it is also 100% true of photographing children.
Nancy, you mentioned that the first year you photographed the dog show, you were trying to photograph all the breeds.
Yeah.
But then you scaled back the next time. Were there specific breeds that you were most attracted to or you found easier to photograph?
So that very first time I photographed the dog show, I was shooting it for Newsday newspaper on Long Island. And their request was, we want Long Island dogs. So that first year, I was so stressed because I was running around being like, oh, your dog is beautiful. Quick question, are you from Long Island?
Oh my
Which
God.
was a little awkward.
Yeah.
And difficult because then I would take these beautiful pictures of this dog and the human, and then they'll be like, oh, we're from Florida. And I'm like, shoot, I can't use it. So the years following, I didn't have to focus just on Long Island dogs. I found myself just sort of wandering around. I don't have a very discerning eye or heart. I love all dogs of all shapes and sizes. And there are some that are very similar looking and maybe it's not as interesting. And obviously the Great Danes are like small horses and I love photographing them. The Yorkies have this beautiful hair that gets pinned up in a red bow. The Basset Hounds have just the most angelic faces and wrinkles and paws. But also my brother and my sister both have Vizslas. And so I feel a special connection to the Vizslas when I see them in the benching area backstage. And then also, since having Einstein, I feel a little bit of a bond and a draw towards the Chihuahuas and the Pomeranians and the Dachshunds and the Corgis. There's just so many. It's sometimes really hard to choose. And sometimes before the show, I'll go through the catalog and say, okay, this year I'm going to pick these breeds and see what time they're going to be in the ring so I can better guess what time of day, they'll be at the benching, because there are 7 or 8 rings in the space. And that means that there are 7 or 8 competitions happening in one time slot. It's so much. And at the end of the day, I just remember looking back at that first shoot thinking I shot so much and it was so much to edit. And at the end of the day, I felt like I had strong images, but maybe if I'd slowed down and was more decisive, I would have been happier with my take, because I would have really been more methodical. I was just so excited.
Yeah, but then again, the first time you're doing that, you didn't know what to expect, and so you're covering everything, and then you had a chance to reflect on, okay, what matters and what doesn't matter. But I think anybody going into that situation, you're just going out to just shoot whatever the heck you can. That's what I would be doing. But then you have a chance to say, okay, here's what's important, here's what's not important.
Yeah.
By the way, you're mentioning dachshunds, and I always say that dachshunds are proof that God has a great sense of humor. Seriously, my neighbor has one named Copper, and I love when it snows watching him walk that dog in the snow. You can tell this dog is just overwhelmed. Nice dog, though. Now, by the way, talking about dogs, and you're talking about photographing all the dogs, and the notes here says there's 200 breeds of dogs across 7 groups in the Westminster Dog Show. Did they ever ask you to, concentrate on one breed or one type of dog over another, or did they ever say, "Don't worry about that one. We don't care"?
No, it was totally up to me, thankfully, because what I went on to do years following that first year was, I have to give myself a pep talk before walking in there, being like, okay, there's going to be so many dogs I want to shoot. There's going to be so many humans that I want to photograph also. I'm just going to take a deep breath. I'm not going to overshoot, and I'm just going to trust my gut and walk around. And it's okay if I miss someone competing in the ring. It's okay if I miss the poodles getting poodled. They get all poofy and beautiful. I'll see them again next year. I just want to make beautiful images. And I have to remind myself to slow down, because also my background is as a news journalist. So I'm just used to covering a scene quickly and efficiently and trying to do a great job. But it's like a kid in a candy store at the dog show for someone like me, So just gotta rein myself in.
Are there any type of dogs that are more difficult to photograph, either because of behavior or appearance or just attitude?
Oh, gosh. Well, one of the years I shot the dog show, this little black Apfenpinscher, I can never pronounce it. It's this adorable little breed of dog. He won Best in Show. I wish I could remember his name. It might have been Banana Joe or something adorably silly like that. But his fur was so fluffy and black, and his eyes were so dark. And both my eye and my camera struggled to focus because there wasn't really a good point of... There was no contrast. And I was just cursing to myself. I was like, it just could have been the Old English sheepdog who came in second, and that would have been so easy. So that is a challenge. But one of my favorite things about, I shoot with Sony, and one of the things I'm most obsessed with right now is the cameras have this real-time eye autofocus for animals. And so it basically just makes it so much easier to get those eyes sharp. Karen was saying you want to pay attention to the eyes and the ears. And the eyes, it's like, if the eyes aren't sharp, can I even use that image?
Well, that's portraiture in general. I mean, if anything has to be in focus, if the eyes are in focus, the rest of it is okay.
Totally.
Because when we look at somebody, we're looking at their eyes. And when you look at somebody in the eyes, they're always in focus. You never look at somebody and say, oh, their eyes are out of focus, but their nose is sharp. That doesn't happen.
Totally. And I'm a sucker for prime lenses, and I love shooting at 1.4. So, the slightest movement, I'm going to get that nose in focus and not those eyes. And, add dogs on top of it. Even the most well-trained dogs, these dogs at the shows are the most well-trained. They're still dogs. They still move. And they still look away. So that has been super helpful when I photograph at the dog show and at home.
What's your favorite breed of dog to photograph?
Well, I will say I find myself drawn to the Afghan hound because they're so elegant, and they have the most beautiful hair that takes hours to straighten and blow out. And they have these expressions on their faces where they just they're sweet, but they also seem a little better than you, and they are better than you. And years ago, I met this beautiful Afghan hound named Enzo, and he looked very much like, I think it was Fabio. I couldn't look away. Yeah. I couldn't look away. And when they run, their hair flows, and it's just, they're majestic.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who had an Afghan hound, beautiful dog, and a Chihuahua. That Chihuahua owned all of them. Okay, it was. I used to laugh at what they had to deal with this little dog ran the other big dog, everything. It was. Oh my hysterical.
Gosh, I would watch that TV show. What a lovely duo! Get them on the show.
So Nancy, A lot of your Westminster pictures are close up, telling details about the dogs and their owners. What lenses were you shooting with when you're getting close up like that?
So I am a sucker for details. I just think they're really great storytelling tools. And so if I'm going to shoot them, I really try to make them interesting photographs, not as sort of an afterthought, but I really try to be thoughtful about them. When I'm at the dog show, I try to be pretty light on my feet because there's just so much to do, so much running around, so much stuff everywhere. I don't want to lose any of my gear. I'm constantly getting up, getting down, laying on the floor. And so I usually have 2 bodies and maybe 2 to 3 lenses with me. And for the detail shots, I'm using my 85 millimeter 1.4 because while I'm not that far away from the subjects, there's this intensity in the preparation for competition. And out of respect for what they're doing, I try not to be in their business. And a lot of people don't appreciate when you get up and close and personal before they compete because they're very focused. So I'll shoot with my 85, which also then, as I said before, the lighting is never all that great. And shooting wide open like that kind of quiets the chaos and sometimes just allows me to make a pretty picture that speaks to the story without it just being pictures of dogs.
Speaking of the lighting, are there any things that you do to try to minimize that bad light, or do you ever add light?
I never add light. I know there are certain aesthetics. People do kind of a poppy flash and it can look really cool. But now that I've gotten to know a lot of the dog breeders and handlers, I realize how much they don't like that. And I like to play the long game. It's part of this project I'm working on that I'm trying to get to know people, and I don't want to upset or offend anyone in the competition. Plus, it's not really my aesthetic to add a lot of light. So I just try to look around. Sometimes I'll pick the dog I'm going to photograph because they happen to be standing in the glimmer of natural light coming through the window, or they have a spotlight on them because they're getting their makeup fixed. And yes, some of them get makeup fixed. I mean, it's sort of how I approach my photography generally. If I'm photographing an event, I'll try to find where the beautiful light is and I'll wait for the moment. Because if nothing else, I feel like light can save your image. I mean, light is what makes your image, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's what
Without
it's all
light,
about.
the image won't exist. Once in a while, I'll have a little video light that I keep with me just in case. But the truth of the matter is that I have never been super confident with strobes or flash. And early in my career, I just found ways around it. And at this point now, it's just not part of my aesthetic.
So, Nancy, your dog show pictures led you to begin a project called Part of the Pack, exploring the relationships between people who raise show dogs and their animal charges.
Mm-hmm.
How many different packs have you photographed, and how much time did you spend with each group?
So I started this project back in 2016. And unfortunately, it's turned into what I like to call a very long-term project, largely because I started it in 2016, and then late 2016, my husband and I moved to the Pacific island of Guam. I tried to find dog packs there. It wasn't quite the same. And then the pandemic hit, and then I had a child, and then I moved to the Caribbean island of St. John. And so it's been hard for me to make time to work on personal projects, which is, I think
life happens.
Life happens. We all can relate to that. But I've been trying to keep up certain relationships that I've made. I made friendships with people. I would send them photographs after. We would start up a conversation, keep in touch over social media, and then I'd tell them about what I was doing, and they would invite me to their homes. I have 5 packs that I have photographed. A few of them I've photographed on more than one occasion. My very first pack was a group of golden retrievers, and I fell in love with their humans, Nancy and Jenny, and I fell in love with the dogs, and they were only about 2 hours drive from my home in Brooklyn. So I wanted to explore this relationship beyond being on stage, how these people could really commit their lives to specific breeds of dogs and what that looked like at home. Because when I got to their home in Pennsylvania, at the time they had 3 or 4 grown Goldens and a few puppies. And if I'm being completely honest, I just wanted to roll around with the puppies. This was just my excuse to get to spend more time with all of the dogs. But usually I spend about 3 or 4 days with the packs. And that pack in particular, because they lived so close, I actually got to go back maybe 3 or 4 times to photograph new litters and the process of them having the puppies. And it's been a really special way to also get to know the people behind these dogs too, because I just want to understand why they choose this life. You know, my dog is from a shelter. These are dogs who are with breeders. I try to be an objective storyteller. And it took some time and maybe a little therapy for me to realize that I think a part of this stemmed from the fact that I was missing a big part of my own family, having lost my parents. And here I am looking at these people, trying to learn about and understand how they've created this family for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think after losing my parents, my husband and I have been very much of the mindset that life is really freaking short. And I'm 37. My parents died not even at 60, right? So I think I'm past my midlife if, say, that's my end as well. So, like, you know.
You got the big picture.
Yeah, I'm just trying to live it. Live it and hang with my OG dog, Einstein, who's currently sleeping 1 foot from me, and spend it with my family.
So speaking of Einstein, you've written a lot about him on social media.
Yes.
And after you became a mother, you went so far as to say that you consider Einstein as your actual firstborn son. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
So before Einstein came into my life, I could barely keep a plant alive. Like, I killed succulents. And they're hard to kill.
They are.
And when I lived in New York City, I loved dogs, but I didn't want to have one of my own. I didn't feel like it was fair, not just in my apartment. You know, I'm a freelance photographer, and I was constantly leaving, and I felt just the idea of leaving a dog, I just didn't know what the quality of life would be in my specific situation for a dog. So when we moved to Guam, which was a much easier, more laid-back lifestyle, a lot of our friends had dogs, and I thought, okay, this might be the moment. I also felt a little isolated, so I could use a buddy. You know, my husband would go into work every day, and I'd be working from home, so we went to the shelter, and he was the only dog that wasn't barking. Frankly, he was ignoring us, and I thought, well, that's bizarre. And we came back the next day, and we brought him home, and he just changed my life. When we moved to Guam, it was pretty soon after my parents died. And I think I was dealing with a lot of grief and processing everything that had happened. And dogs just are so healing. Einstein is such a good listener, such a great companion, the perfect muse and model. He never protests when I want to photograph him, and he always finds the beautiful light. I've taught him well. And it changed something for me. Every morning I would get up and I would walk him, and I tell people it was sort of this active meditation that helped me find my way back to myself, because we would just take the time in the morning and walk our street and listen to the church bells and feel the breeze and
Get centered.
And, you know, I had to feed him, and I had to care for him, and I had to love him. And it was a good first chapter in becoming a mother. Yeah, obviously, human children, as it turns out, are much more complicated and nuanced and challenging. And my 3.5-year-old likes to talk back and challenge me, and Einstein would never. What I'm dealing with right now, unfortunately, is I feel like I'm busy with my 3.5-year-old, I'm busy with my 4-month-old, and then I see Einstein just watching me from like 10 feet away, sort of like, we had it really good. And you had to go and change everything. I still love you, but I'm not pleased. I know. It kills me. I was dreaming of this Instagram friendship where, you know, he would bond immediately with my kids, and it would be this beautiful thing. And the second I brought Levi, my first son, home, Einstein was just like, how could you? And walked away. And then went and sat in one of Levi's play mats because he had just assumed it was for him. Anyway, that was a very long answer to a very simple question, but it's the truth.
So has photographing people and their pets had any effect on the way you approach photographing human relationships?
I think photographing pets and dogs in particular takes patience. It takes a lot of observation and anticipation and understanding and knowing that things might change in a moment, and you're trying to communicate and they don't understand. And I think it has certainly made me a much more patient person. And I don't know, I think it has influenced the way that I photograph people and vice versa. I don't know. It keeps me it keeps me balanced. I get up in the morning. Once my toddler's off to school and my 4.5-month-old is occupied, I sit at my computer. Einstein sits next to me, and I say, "Okay, let's get to work." And he looks at me, and then he puts his head down and closes his eyes, and he's like, "All right, I'm ready." And that's like
That's what I do on the show.
He's my co-pilot. He's my co-pilot. I have
great.
no shame gushing about it. I am a crazy dog lady, if you did not already realize.
We understand. We all understand. It's okay. You're in a safe space. It's okay. You're in a safe space here.
So Nancy, circling back to your photos from Westminster and part of the pack, how do the relationships differ between dogs and their owners in a competition setting versus in their home environment?
Yeah. So these dogs that you see at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, they're so well trained. You know, they all have plenty of shows under their belts or collars. And they know how to behave around other dogs. They know their commands. They're not really bothered by the mass amounts of people and lights, cameras, the other barking. And they're doing what they're told. A lot of the handlers and the breeders, you'll see they have pieces of hot dog like attached to their sleeve using a rubber band, or it's the hot dog's in their mouth. Like they're pulling out the big guns to make sure that as well trained as their dog is, that they're gonna really do what they're asking under pressure. What's kind of wonderful is that when they are home, you really see like the dogs let their hair down. They are pets, you know, like a lot of them, when they're off duty, they just want to play fetch and they want to snuggle on the couch. And to see that side of their personalities, but then also the dynamic at home, you know, like when again, with the Goldens, I got up with them at 4 a.m. when they were going to take their dogs for a walk and give them breakfast and do all these things before they start their work days. It's really this parent-child relationship. And I think I feel a connection to that even more now, being a parent of kids, not just of a dog. And it's a really beautiful thing because it's not all about the show. It's about the love that these people have for their dogs and vice versa, and for the specific breeds. And you see that. And you hear that because I also try to have, you know, conversations. I do some interviews with the people and try to learn about how they chose this breed and this pack to be their family. And that becomes really evident in a really powerful and beautiful way. I prefer photographing them at home than at the dog show, 1,000%. I use the dog show as an opportunity to like network.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
One last thing is that there's so many photographers at the show, and understandably, sometimes the breeders and the handlers can be a little guarded because there are people who are very much against breeding, and there's also people who like to poke fun at the culture of the dog show. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Best in Show, and it's a very accurate depiction of the dog shows. But because of that, it makes these people a little wary to let a photographer into their home. And so I just try to be like I would with humans. I try to be transparent about my intentions. I also have a release form that I started to ask people to sign because I would like to do something with this, publish this project in some capacity. But I also am completely open with them and honest and vulnerable the way that I would be when photographing humans, because they're letting me into their lives and their intimate worlds.
Right.
And I just try to practice the same thing. Yeah. Actually, this past month, a few of the photographs that are part of this project are now in a special edition for National Geographic. They have like an annual The Secret Life of Dogs issue, and I got to feature 4 of my photographs from my packs, which was really, really exciting.
That's great.
That's very cool. That's
huge.
very cool.
I wasn't planning on publishing anything soon, but, you know, it's National Geographic, so...
And when is that?
It hit stands last week.
Ah, Fantastic.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
A new reason to go to the store today. Okay, there we go.
Print isn't dead.
So, one closing question for both of you, Nancy and Karen. What thoughts and ideas do either of you have about the conventions of modern pet ownership and the pet industry in general?
I mean, when it comes to pet ownership, I would say I'm pretty sure Einstein owns me rather than the other way around. I worry about him when I'm away. I worry about him when I'm here. And I think having a pet is such a gift. Animals are so healing. I'm a lifelong dog person, but as of late, I have fallen in love with some special cats who have stolen my heart. And just I believe there's such power in having these animals around. They just have the power to heal and love and listen and support you. So that's my 2 cents.
What about you, Karen?
One thing I've noticed, people are more willing to talk about how good animals are for their mental health. I mean, especially during COVID, I mean, who didn't walk their dog 10 miles a day? I feel like animals became so important. I know I was volunteering at the cat rescue during that time and just really was wonderful, just like being in the kitten room with all the kittens.
Oh my gosh.
And so people's animals became more important to them. Of course, they're going to want a photo of this important family member and this part of their life that's just so good for their mental health. I mean, even if they just took that photo, put it on their desk at work, it just keeps them calm.
Mm.
Do you know what the payback is? I recently had some surgery, and when I came home, my cat did not leave my side. She did not leave my side. And typically, like at night, she curls up next to my wife. She curled up next to me for a few nights, and she did not leave my side. They understand. They know. They can pick up on a lot of things. And I know I'm not the only one who's had that experience. I know that. I've heard it from other people. But if you go through it firsthand, you get to appreciate what a pet is. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it can be frustrating and annoying, and they destroy your furniture. Mine's not too bad at that. But at the end of the day, when you're hurting, they're there, and it's honest.
Yeah, that actually, I'm adding one little side story that, like, I totally relate to that too. When my mom was dying, a friend of ours, actually a well-known photographer, Stephanie Sinclair, she had sort of loaned me her dog, Moses, who is this little black pug, and he was adorable, and just, we didn't have a dog at that time, and we knew how healing it would be to have an animal around. And in the last couple of days of my mom's life, when she was sort of bedridden and couldn't do very much, she didn't really want to be touched, but she did not mind having Moses come and cuddle with her and snort, every time she breathed in and out. And it gave us all this sort of levity in such a heavy moment. And it was so cathartic and beautiful. They have the capacity. We're lucky that they let us into their lives, huh?
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Good point.
Wonderful point to end on.
Yeah. It's a good way of ending. Just brings a little bit of humanity into the whole subject here. Karen, any interesting projects coming up aside from anything we might have discussed here today in the immediate future?
Well, I'm going into my busy season right now, so I'm kind of client-focused. But one of the things I really love about this podcast is it does remind me, oh yeah, I should be working on personal projects. And actually, Jill, one thing you said earlier gave me a good idea. I was thinking about your night photography and how cats wake up in the middle of the night. I try to think of who would let me come to their house at 3:30 in the morning and take night pictures of their cats. How funny that would be. And of course I'd have to hashtag it, #kittens,
And Nancy, what about yourself? Any projects coming up here?
Well, I mean, my first project right now is I have a 4.5-month-old, so trying to figure out life with a newborn. But actually, I'm hoping to be done with a project that I started about 2 years ago, very soon. I had pretty bad postpartum depression after my first son was born, and about a year into that, I started to think about ways I could claw my way out, and maybe using photography, kind of the way that I did when my parents died, thought maybe it could help. And in my journey to explore postpartum depression, I met a woman who had had a stillbirth. She had lost her baby at 38 weeks. And I started to learn, I started to learn more. And I learned that, 1 in every 170 pregnancies ends in stillbirth. That's like 3 kindergarten classrooms of children every single day in the US. Like, that's not a small number. And as a new mom, I just felt for these women that I started to meet. I was so also inspired by the fact that they had lived through such unbelievable trauma and kind of came out on the other side and were trying to survive. I think I was also maybe feeling a connection to them in some capacity because that shared trauma and grief that I had felt losing my parents in some ways felt similar. So I started to talk to these women and to challenge myself to work on portraiture. So I've been creating these little stories with each woman about a portrait of them, because mom is never in the photograph, I've learned as a mom, but also kind of paying tribute to the child that only they knew. So I'm calling it the Lost Mother's Stone, after that Jewish tradition where you leave the stone on the headstone at the cemetery to honor their memory and make sure people know that they were loved and that they were visited. And even though they're not here anymore, I'm trying to do something similar with these women and their stories. So I have a few more to photograph this summer. And then I'm hoping to share it and teach people about these women and these children. And frankly, that with the science and technology we have today, many of these stillbirths are actually preventable.
I think that's a terrific project, and I'd look forward to seeing what you do.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll come back on here and we can talk about it.
Karen and Nancy, thank you both for joining us today. We're going to post the links to all of your websites, Instagram, and everything else you might want to be putting out there. So if our listeners want to catch up on what each of you are doing, just go to the show notes or the podcast and click away, and you can take in some really wonderful, wonderful photography. I'd like to thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
It's great to speak with you both.
On that happy note, if you are a fan of the show but not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. You can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests and show notes. And please join us on Facebook and the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photographs and comments about the show. I'm your host, Alan Weitz. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Our executive producer is Jeremy Weiss, and our editorial director is Sean Steiner. On behalf of all of us at the show.
Oh my God, that is so good.